Welcome to the Fatherhood Unity Month. Mondays are reserved for Mental Health Mondays. Today, our guest is Dr. Chandra Carr of the Miller Carr. We wanted to come on and have a discussion today, Dr. Carr, uh, about the mental health of new and young fathers. My name is Calvin Mann, president and founder of Encourage Me, I'm Young and Good Fathers Only. And this is Dr. Chandra Carr. Welcome.
Thank you.
So how has this time been for you? The COVID, what's going on? Give us a brief overview about yourself.
COVID itself has been very difficult for a lot of people to deal with. We've been losing loved ones. We haven't been able to interact with each other as we once did, and we're missing that personal connection with each other, which can be very hard and difficult. Some are even scared to go outside even the more, so that can be cause for concern as well. Just to be able to go on your porch or to the store without being in fear of being harmed. So that is very difficult for most people. But we're just trying to make it through using technology as much as we can to interact with each other through avenues of Zoom, through the phone, and things like that. So just trying to do well with that.
Yeah, I really understand that. If you can give us a brief overview about Dr. Chandra Carr. A lot of people don't know how gifted and precious you have been, to us and for us. So I think we should, open it up with, you having that discussion, a little bit about yourself.
Sure. So my name is Dr. Chandra Carr. I am the CEO and president of Miller Carr Human Services. We cater to children and families in every avenue. We work with them as far as physically, mentally, emotionally, and academically as well. We work with the whole person. So we interact with those of all ages, to really help the community and help individuals be better and do better and teach them so they know better so they can do those things. So me as a whole, I'm an alumni of Michigan State University. I have a bachelor's in family community service. My master's is in social work from U of M, and I have a PhD in counseling. So I've worked with children and families in many facets. I've worked in the school system, I've worked in the jails, I've worked in the community. So I love working with children and making them see who they really are, their potential, and how much they can grow. So that's a little bit about me.
Awesome. So these like we were talking before we came on, these last few days have been very, very tough. For some people it's been enlightening, some people it's been freedom, and some people it's just been tough to deal with. I know you just touched on the COVID, but what do you think you're seeing with the situation, and how much you think this will impact families? Just a little bit on that, as far as what is taking place with the riots.
Absolutely. I can see this as a positive as far as bringing families closer together. I see this as an opportunity of parents teaching their children what this is about and how to act in a way to show that you care, show that your life matters, those around you matter. And it gives history a perspective as well. A lot of times we learn things from the past, but we really don't understand them until they come out in the future. So a lot of us are doing those things that were done in the past, but I really see this more as a motivational tool for people to get more antiquated with things that are going on in the world, that we're just not keeping our eyes closed and saying, oh, that's not me, or that didn't happen in my state, but it's really affecting everyone. And I think it's good that we bring the children in so that they can learn and understand what's going on, and that this is really about them, and how they're going to be looked at, perceived, and thought about in the future. So I see this as a great time to be a family and to interact with each other and have that time set aside to really get a understanding and a clarity of what's going on.
Well, I had to be honest with you. Like I was saying earlier, I myself have just been, struggling. I've just been not so much as using the word struggle, but just been in a deep thought, a place because there's so much coming in, there's so much happening, and I'm constantly asked to detach myself, from what you're seeing and what you're taking in, and you know um, how does that work? Should we really be careful? How much should we be taking in? How much information or negativity should we be taking in as families and friends during this time? I know you were saying how good it was, but how much should we be taking in of this information that's coming in these days?
Well, it is hard to detach yourself from those things because they directly affect you and who you are and things of that nature. So I would never say not to be a part of it or understand what's going on. But just like when COVID hit and it was on the news 24/7, all day, every day, it brought about depression, it brought about anxiety and things like that. So I always say with anything that we do, take caution of how much you are participating in it, and if the if what you're doing is not educating you or someone around you or allowing you to be able to speak your voice, then be careful how much of that you bring into your life and into your world. I know a lot of people have been protesting on a positive way, in a positive manner, um, doing things on social media. Those things are great, and those things you can continue to interact. But if watching it and seeing it is starting to have you think of people and things in a negative way, starting to have you act out in a way that may be aggressively or harmful to others around you, then you might have to pull back how much you're watching and interacting with it.
Yeah, yeah. It's this whole this whole mindset thing right now is it's just been very very tough. I was having a conversation earlier with a student from Michigan State, and on one hand they were feeling one way, on another hand they were feeling another way. I think a lot of us have gotten comfortable with it, but what are some of the things right now? I mean, before we can really get into in depth in our conversation, I mean, you just touched on a number of things, but should it be a certain amount of hours we allow the kids to participate through media? I mean, what does that look like?
I think it has to be guided when you're dealing with media and what's going on. So if you more so allow your children to watch different, like watching peaceful protests so they can see, and then you talk about Dr. Martin Luther King and what was done back then. So they have a comparison to understand what it is, not promoting hurting people or harming things. You just have to be able to monitor it, but make that connection for them. Because if they just see it out there arbitrarily, they really don't know and understand what's going on, depending on the age. And then if they're old enough to take things into their own hands, you want to definitely educate them to be able to do those things the right way. It's no problem standing up for yourself. It's no problem telling others about who you are and what you can do, but it has to be done in a way that is appropriate, that doesn't put any more harm on yourself or those around you.
Woo! It's a lot. It's a lot taking place, and I'm most definitely trying to be careful myself because I consume a lot of people, information, conversation, and situations. So I'm really trying to be careful myself. So that kind of segues us into our conversation: new and young fathers, the importance of new and young fathers, their mindset, and this was a question I really had asked you before, and I'm just really curious and with that, because new and young fathers are very, very important. It's the start. It's
Mhm.
their first interaction with their kids, their fatherhood, the whole nine. So, my first question would be, what is the mental health on new and young fathers? What should that look like for a new father and a young father?
Usually, from a mental health perspective, young and new fathers deal a lot with anxiety. And this anxiety comes from a number of emotions and feelings when they hear that news that they're about to have a child. So, depending on the father's relationship with the mother, depending on their housing, their employment, wherever their finances are at that time, where they get that news, that all triggers different emotions and that anxiety can come on. But these overwhelming thoughts that people or men may have are normal, and they happen, especially to first-time fathers. But I don't want the fathers to second guess themselves and wonder, if I can be a good father, and things like that. The anxiety comes from not knowing and not being sure. And so a lot of times men may or may not have had father figures in their life, or the ones they've had may not been what they perceive to a good father to be. So it's like, oh, I don't have this example. What am I supposed to do? I don't really know. But there are no, there's not a book that say this is the perfect parent that you have to be to raise the perfect child. Every parent is learning as they go. And I tell fathers all the time, stick to your values, stick to your beliefs, and interact with those who you feel have your best interest at heart. And then they can pour into you some things that you need to be the best father that you can. But don't allow the anxiety to get the best of you. Don't allow your thoughts to overwhelm you as far as what you can do or can't do as being a father.
Yeah, that anxiety will. You're a first time father. I don't know if a lot of people really talk about that. I beat myself up so bad. It took my son's mom handed me a card to tell me it was a boy, and I went quiet for about an hour. Then I jumped up, was like, just spoke blessings over his life. I had no idea, how much anxiety came with it, because I was carrying my dad's misfortune. You know what I mean? So I was carrying a lot to go with that. So when you a first time father and that piece is sitting over on your shoulder, and you really don't have no answers, you've been beat up with you just like your daddy, you know what I mean? You get all of that. So that anxiety is double, you know. And so for me, that was a big issue. So I'm hoping that the fathers that are watching, the young fathers, uh, can really get a grip of that. Just a thought on that. What are some of the health practices they need to have and need for their children? What are some of the things that they can do and need to have for their children?
Well, one thing that you can do, especially with the anxiety, is to just relax. Do not think about, oh, what college they going to, and you know, they only in the womb for 3 months. Don't worry and think about, don't worry and think about things that do not pertain to right now what's going on, because that's where the overwhelming comes to be. When we keep thinking about those things, you want to make sure that you are preparing for the child to come, so you put things in order. You break it down into little pieces. If finances is not where you want it to be, okay, let's look at jobs. Let's look at employment. If that's not where you want it to be, let's look at a resume. Let's look at getting a new job. Let's look at some coaching. Do some things like that, but take it step by step and take it day by day. Don't let it overwhelm you. I tell people who have issues with anxiety to make sure you do some physical interactions as well. So that means like walking, riding your bike, weightlifting, anything that you can do physically for a set amount of time, maybe 30 minutes, that will help to reduce the anxiety as well. Also, something that you can do is write things down. As men, as fathers, we have goals that we want to achieve with our children, for their lives and for ours as well as parents. And so write those things down and write those goals down, and then have objectives of how you're going to get there. And while the baby is baking, have those things up on the refrigerator or a board somewhere where you can keep going back and looking at them and see where you are in that process. Because then it's like you're motivating yourself to get where you want to be. And so you're interacting with different people to help you get there as well. You know, you have your support system there to help you and to work with you. And you have to be the best you that you can be as fathers. So that means you have to be healthy mentally, physically, emotionally. You know, if you're not eating right or at all, then that's what you need to start doing. You need to start exercising, and you need to take care of yourself and enjoy yourself. You know, as men, it's hard because we see men as providers, and men feel like they have to be all and do all, but you need to take care of yourself as well. Enjoy the things around you, enjoy the people around you, and not let work dictate your life. Anybody that works 7 days a week, that's too much. You gotta have a break. You gotta have some time to recharge. And I know a lot of people feel like, well, I have these bills and I have these responsibilities. So that means you need to reevaluate the things that are going on in your life and where your money is going and how you're using it, so that you can have that time for yourself. You are the only father that child is going to have. If you're not there, they don't have one. So you need to be able to take care of yourself. Going to the doctor, I stress that to men. They don't ever want to go, but you got to go to the doctor. You got to make sure that you are good, even if it's just your yearly checkup. Because a lot of times we have things that don't show symptoms, and you won't know that it's there unless you go to the doctor, get some blood work done, and things like that. So again, take care of yourself, and that will help your children as well.
Good, good. Anybody got any questions? You can raise your hand, and in between the questions, let me know. We can interact. Before I move to the next question, anybody got a question? All right. So our next question is, if you can share 3 indicators, triggers that young fathers should be aware of, and when they should actually seek help.
Definitely be aware of yourself. Know yourself, meaning that if you start to not interact with your children or not interact with other people, that's a cause for concern. Being distant and standoffish, that's a cause for concern. Look at your eating habits. Are you eating too much or not enough? Are you sleeping, or are you not being able to sleep at all? Is it hard to turn your mind off when it's time to go to sleep? These are things that are very important because these can lead to depression. And fathers get depressed just like mothers do after the babies come. And they don't really realize that. They just go on with the motions. But these things are important. If you're having any of these issues or symptoms for 14 days in a row, then you got to talk to somebody. You got to talk to somebody, because it will continue and it will increase, and it won't be good. Because if you're not interacting with anybody, then the baby is not getting the love and attention that it needs. Those first few months are vital for connection with the parent and the loved one. So definitely look for those things and interact. But you got to know yourself. You got to know, dang, what's going on with me? I usually, will eat, or I usually will be able to fall asleep. If those things are not occurring, that's important. You need to talk to someone about that.
Well, so a new young father who just, in that process, he really doesn't know, he really doesn't understand. There's a part of the new young dynamic you had said in this conversation about those first few days, the first few months for the connection. Mm-hmm. And right? And this is a question off what we had discussed, but I'm gonna kind of touch on it because of the miscarriages, the things that come with that infant mortality, right? Um,
Mhm.
there was a study done by Wayne State how important it is for fathers to really be involved during the entire pregnancy
Yes.
on how the child can have healthy outcomes. I mean, if you could give a little bit on that, that would be perfect because I had brought this up. It's kind of hard for a man to say it in a woman's setting, right? Because we were doing this, and I was with Dr. Carolyn, and we were talking about it, and I said, "Well, tell him." And she was like, "What?" I was like, "I need you to tell him because if I say it, it might be taken the wrong way." So when she explained it, it was different. So explain what that dynamic is about how important fathers are to be there during that time.
Absolutely. So the baby can hear. And so if they're hearing the mother's voice, they need to hear the father's voice as well. So talking to the child as if you were having a conversation with someone else is important and it's vital. They need to understand who you are. If they're constantly hearing your voice, they're going to recognize that voice when they come out. And so I tell fathers as well, hold your children, hold them as much as you can, close to you, because they want and they need to get your scent. Your smell is important, and they need to be able to hear your voice. They need to be able to feel and hear your heartbeat, just like they do with the mom. And so you're just as important and just as vital as she is. And so that interaction with the child is important. Now, some people feel like, well, if me and the mom, aren't together, then, I don't really need to be there. That is absolutely not true. Absolutely not. Two people can co-parent and don't have to be in a relationship with each other. And so being able to do that means that those two adults, grown adults, have to come to a consensus of how they're going to raise the child. But parenting time needs to be given to both. And so it's very vital and it's important from day one to always be there as much as possible. They can hear you, they need to be able to smell you, they need to be able to hear your heartbeat. And all those things are vital to that relationship. And not just be there when they're young, but consistently throughout their lives. Talking. Now we have so much with technology, it's not even a reason for fathers and people not to be able to interact with each other. So that FaceTime, that Zoom in, whatever you need to do, they need to be able to see your face and make that connection with the visual to the audio. See your face, hear your voice, they know that you're dad.
Wow. Now you put in that when you outside of that, Dr. Carr, it's like when you say these things, like without having that scientific information, it's something that we did pre-ancestors, whatever you want to. We always were communicating with the child. We get to this certain point now, and we're not doing a lot of communicating, and so our boys have been suffering for years. I just wrote an article about why unite fatherhood, and in that process, it was just important for us to understand that the boy has been without his maternal real male role model consistently for centuries. And it's really tough, and I have to be careful about my emotions because I'm very, very serious about this. It's very tough when you're not able to do that. Anybody got any questions? All right, we're gonna keep it moving, right? And what advice do you offer to new and young fathers?
My number one, spend as much time with your children as possible, much interaction as possible, building those healthy and strong relationships. That bond with the child is so vital and important to that child's growth. Their interaction with the father, their perception of their father, all of that is major and it's important. When I was working on my PhD, I did my dissertation on the relationship between the father and the child, and how that dictated their outcomes, the child's outcomes. And that father needed to be there. And so a lot of times in research, it states that Black fathers are not present. They don't want to be present. But when I did my research, that just was absolutely not true. Fathers want to be involved in their children's life. They want to interact with their children, and they make efforts to try to provide for their children in any way possible. And I believe, Calvin, what you stated was very true, that communication is a key. It is key with the mom, and it is key with the child as well, whether you're in a relationship or not. But that communication has to be there at all times. And it can be, it definitely can be. Even if you need a mediator, it has to be there. So, every child deserves the right to have two parents in their life at all times.
Which is our tagline.
Yeah.
Kids need both. Kids need both parents, right?
Absolutely.
Yes, ma'am.
Yep. And hugging is your child.
Hugging is it. It's right now. A lot of people are gonna have to make that adjustment on hugging. Question from the audience is: how do we communicate to mothers that fathers need to be present for the child? Even question kind of faded. Let me get it. Even if the mother and father are not together.
Yes, so the mother and the father does not have to be together to be able to co-parent the child. What the mother and the father need to do is communicate with each other on how they're going to parent that child. And so they cannot let their own feelings and emotions towards each other dictate their interaction with their children. That's not fair. And so it takes, what I stated before, two grown people to sit down and communicate and set up some rules and guidelines of how they're going to do that. If those two individuals are not able to do that, as I stated before, a mediator needs to be there, but there needs to be guidelines and rules, and then they need to be upheld. So if dad gets to pick up the child from school every day, then dad needs to make sure he picks up the child from school every day. If weekends is for mom, then mom gets the weekends. Things come up, life happens, but that there needs to be a consistency there for whatever is agreed upon, and the agreement needs to be fair. And if the child is old enough, then allow the child to be part of that planning process as well.
How do you get us to set our sides of differences? And this is just me personally, right? How do we get to set our differences aside, because with my youngest son, there's some things, and, I do a lot of communicating, but, what steps can a man take to help set aside some of those differences with his child, and the other parent, even though the other parent doesn't want to communicate?
Now, when the other parent doesn't communicate, it does make it hard, especially when the child is smaller and cannot communicate for themselves. What I would suggest is that both parents be able to look at the situation for what it is, and it's the growth of the child. It's not for me and you to be together, or the two parents to be together. It's to make the child successful. In which way can we do that? And so it means that not to be selfish as well, with your own personal needs and wants, but looking ahead at what this child needs to have a better future. And it does go down to communication. If verbal communication does not work with that individual who does not want the relationship to occur, then sometimes you have to write. You have to do it in text. You have to write letters and things like that. And it may seem like, oh, they're not even gonna read it. Oh, why do I have to do that? But you have to try and make the effort to be able to do that, because again, what's important is that child in your life and you being in that child's life.
Right. So this is where I think I can give another question. What are the dangers of using the child to negotiate parenting rights?
Yeah, the child should never be used for that. It's about the time that is being able to be spent with the child. So, when parents use their children as a way to get things that they want, it's not good nor is appropriate. And then as the child grows up, they do see that and recognize that as well. So it doesn't have a positive light on the parent to the child who is doing that. So parents must be very, very careful with that. Children are not stupid at all. They're very smart. They pick up on things very quickly, even as young as 3 and 4 year old. And they may not have any power, so to speak, but they know what's going on and they understand very clearly. And so parents have to be careful with that, to never use their child in that type of way. The relationship between the father and the mother is vital. It doesn't always have to be romantic, but it has to be in a way where it's friendly enough to be able to communicate with each other. I mean, I have a couple that I've worked with. They're not together. They have a child and they can't stand each other. And literally all they do is text each other. They don't even verbally talk to each other at all. And as time went on, the child is now old enough where they can communicate with each parent on their own, and the two parents don't even have to really interact with each other at all. And for that situation, that works well because the relationship was so tainted between both parents. But what always has to be known is that what is better for the child? Are you not letting the child see the father because he's harmful, because he'll hurt the child? Or you don't want the child to see the parent or the father just because you don't like the father? So you got to think about those things, you know, when you're making decisions. And that's why I said, don't be selfish. Don't allow your own personal feelings to dictate those interactions between the child and their parent.
Yeah, that manipulation is very savvy. Mm-hmm. It could be very, very savvy, you know. Paul's got a question. Hold on one second. Go ahead, Paul.
I just want to interject a little bit that we're missing a part of the dynamics once you become a parent is their parents. The parenting that they received, they're going to accidentally give it to their children because they didn't know that that was an abnormal situation. Being abandonment as a child and you become a parent, is easy for you to fall into that abandonment stage. It's like, I remember working with the homeless veterans and asking them, are they connected to their family? And one of the answers they would give me is, well, I wasn't connected to my dad. So he felt it was okay, or an excuse not to be connected to his kids. So when you have these parents that are not, I would say, they're not playing fair, if you look up their tree, you'll see why. Because the majority of the time, it's that. So I do have a question. When you are counseling parents, do you go that route too? Do you go look up the tree and try to explain to them this is what they're doing, pretty much what was done to them? Ms. Carr, Dr. Carr?
Yeah, it depends on what type of counseling that we're doing. If we're doing something that's more psychoanalytic and more in-depth, absolutely. We go back through the history and see what's going on and how those things from their past affects them emotionally, physically, mentally, you know, absolutely. We do look at those things. And a lot of times looking at those things are great because some people don't even realize that they're doing it until it's brought out or called out that they are doing that. And with being able to call that out, it also is great because now we can see what the problem is and actually make the change, actually work towards doing something different and having a different process. It's almost like, you know, we as people, if we just keep doing something and nobody ever tell us we're doing it wrong, we just gonna keep on doing it, you know, forever. And so sometimes you gotta have those individuals to point those things out to you. And that's why it's so good to have support systems as well, because not everybody will see a Dr. Carr and find those things out. But if you got great support systems that are true and honest with you, they will tell you about yourself, whether you're doing things right or wrong. And so it's good to have that as well. But absolutely.
Okay, so another question. How can a new father get info to help distinguish parenting? Hold on. Distinguish parenting as pets, from parenting pets or toys, possessions over parenting.
How can they get information
Yeah.
to see parenting as one thing instead of having a
Yep.
possession.
Let me read it again for you. How can a new father get info to help distinguish parenting children from parenting pets or toys or possessions?
Okay. Well, there is a difference between that. However, some people don't see it that way because people sometimes feel that their pets are their children, and so they treat them as such. But when you have a child and you're interacting, you are instilling values and morals and goals into them, which is something that you cannot do with a pet. And so that interaction with that child takes on a different form, to where you have more communicating, you have more interaction, and you have more time to allow them to experience things there with your guidance. So information like that, I mean, some of it is resource based, but then other ways to get it, you just, you find individuals who are a part of that, and maybe doing parenting classes and things like that as well.
So this brings me to a good point. This is where I get into my little excitement part, right? The value. So just for you, from your research and your study, how important are fathers?
Fathers are extremely important. You can't, so this is Dr. Carr's 2 cents on here. You have to have people in your life that are valuable to you, to uplift you, and to help you. And having both that father and that mother figure in your life is needed. I really believe and think that sometimes if there are individuals who do not have biological fathers that are around in their life, they still need to have that father figure from someone in their life to be able to teach them and show them. And I believe this is both for young ladies and for young boys. They need to have both in their life, because both the mother and the father can teach them something on a different perspective, even if it's the same topic. And so having both of that interaction and that information is needed. I stress to fathers to always hold their children's hands. And I say that because that gives them a sense of security. It gives them a sense of protection. And then they really know and understand what that means and what that feels like. Because there's so many people out here in this world that never feel like they were protected, never feel like they was loved, and doesn't know how that looks. And so when they think they got it, they really don't have it. And other things can persist in their life because of their perception of something that's not really real. But if you have both sides of the coin, meaning the mother and the father, in that child's life, it can help them dramatically with their outcomes for themselves.
So yes, that's the most success. That's a big success. You always get pushback when you look at the studies and you go back and you look at the Moynihan report and how they set up with the Moynihan report, and notice that even in poverty we were sticking together, right? So they had to devise a plan to separate. And as you go down this process, I kept going back looking at the process, right? And so, at the process, the 1964 Food Stamp Act, 1965 Moynihan Report, 1965 Juvenile Report, then the 1969 No Fault Divorce Act. We love to say people are not, this was a policy, it was good, it was that, but the process was not at hand for mental health to be a huge part of the family back then, right? That wasn't the process. Domestic violence was through the roof, so you can kind of understand where some of those things were. But I looked at it from the Black family perspective right into the fatherhood perspective. So I kept looking. And as I was looking and doing the necessary research, it just kept looking like we need to like everything was get the father out the way, right? And so I say all that. The reason why I'm yelling and screaming about uniting fatherhood is exactly what you're saying. One of the things that one of the conversations I had, even when I interviewed Paul and other fathers, is the first advice other fathers give to a father is go talk to a father. Go talk to someone you view as a good father, a decent father. Go talk to them, right, to get some tools if you don't know. And so you just saying how valuable we are is the reason why we're doing this Fatherhood Unity Month, right? We need to understand that we have been conditioned not to value the input of the father. There are so many stories, and I can share this with you, Dr. Carr. Men literally fight, not just the system, the mother, job. Men literally have to fight to be a father. What are some of the ideas you can help us in dealing when we're dealing with maybe some things that you can add to us, and then you can go into from there, closing or whatever you want to do. But what are some of the things that we can do during the fight, right? Like you said, take care of ourselves. We got a couple of those things, but is there some other things you'd like to add? Because I'm with you. I don't believe, through the research and through my years being involved and watching kids and working with males for over 30 years, I don't believe that a father just chooses not to be in his child's life.
Yes, there are several things that occur which I don't want to say mandate, but has the father to retract. But I don't believe any father really wants to do that at all. I really believe if the father could and would be there, he would. I think having resources and outlets like for Good Fathers Only and things like that, so other men can see what it looks like, how to do it, and they have someone to stand strong with them. Sometimes it's lonely when you out there fighting by yourself, and when you feel that no one is understanding and you keep feeling like you're bumping your head up against a brick wall and not getting it any further. So having that support will be great to help those fathers continue to fight. And as the child continues to get older, they will be able to have that interaction with the father themselves. And then the mother won't even have to be a part of that process, which is unfortunate, because I really think that if you can do a tag team interaction with the child, it makes it even better for that child and for them growing up. But I think that fathers should never stop fighting to be a part of their child's life in whichever way possible. Sometimes we just have to get savvy in how we do that and how we interact with them, but never deprioritize that relationship, because it is definitely important and needed.
You just made me feel so good. Like the word get savvy. Man, I can tell you some incredible stories of fathers where we have had to be savvy just to be in our children's lives. It's some incredible stories. With that being said, Dr. Carr, man, I don't know what to say. I really appreciate it. I really wanted to have this conversation because this week is all about new and young fathers getting information, investment, and really taking care of themselves. And you gave them quite a bit. Tell everyone where they can contact you, reach you for your services. I know you are doing telehealth services as well, right?
Absolutely, yep. So we're doing telehealth. We had other services, and it looks like we're starting to open, or the world is starting to open back up. So we'll be able to do those things as well. But we do a lot of mentoring for adolescent girls. We do a lot for our elderly population with technology. therapy is a number one thing that we do, but we do a lot of helping as far as providing clothes, food. We did a lot during this pandemic for individuals who needed cleaning supplies and things like that, food, you know, everything. And then we have other resources and individuals that we partner with to be able to make those connections as well. So I can always be reached by email. And my email is ccarr with 2 R's. So that's CCARR at millercarr.org. My number is 248-702-5341. And you can always check us out at our website, which is www.millercarr.org. And thank you for having me, Calvin.
Not a problem. And of course, she's a partner to everything. So we most definitely love her. She's brilliant, and we are excited about the information and the growth we'll have going forward. Dr. Carr, man, again, I love you. I appreciate you. The way that you deliver your services, and it helps us all. The calmness and the strength that you show here today is just perfect. I know, like Dr. Hill, my man, Dr. Hill, he'll get on. He got a lot of energy, so he, you know, he'll go. But you know, I really appreciate your time. I know it's very important, and we thank you. Again, we love you and we appreciate you. You enjoy yourself. Have a great, great day, and thank you again. This has been Fatherhood Unity Month, the Mental Health Mondays with Dr. Chandra Carr. Stay tuned. Tomorrow we'll be bringing in Pete Rome for health, food, and the things that we need to take into our bodies to be better. My name is Calvin Mann, president and founder of Good Fathers Only, and Encourage Me, I'm Young. Thank you. Oh, I got to give a special shout out, most definitely, to the Campaign for Black Male Achievement for your sponsorship and your support continuously. Shout out to Sean Dove and the Campaign for Black Male Achievement for supporting us continuously. My name is Calvin Mann. Good night.
Thank you.